You've promised yourself you'd quit, maybe 5 times, maybe 20. And every time, it's the exact same thing. You hold on for a few days, then something happens, and you're right back where you started. And the scariest part isn't that you relapsed. The scariest part is that you start thinking there's something wrong with you, that others can do it, but you can't, that you're weaker, that this is forever. But I'm going to tell you something important right now. You are not weak. You are simply fighting the wrong enemy. The Japanese understood this long before there were self-help books, life coaches, and 21-day life-changing marathons. Samurai monks, craftsmen, they didn't believe in willpower as the main tool. They knew a person doesn't change through a sudden jolt, but through a rhythm. Today, I'm going to walk you through the complete Japanese system for breaking out of any bad habit. Not theory, not pretty words, but concrete steps that work with your mind rather than against it. 5 chapters. Each one shifts how you look at yourself. Stay with me until the end, because the final story about the samurai Kanoya personally changed everything for me. Here's how most people think. I smoke, therefore I'm weak. I procrastinate, therefore I'm lazy. I overeat, therefore I have no self-control. I stare at my phone for hours, therefore I'm mindless. We are so used to slapping labels on ourselves, and that is exactly what makes us helpless. Japanese psychology looks at this completely differently. Every bad habit you have actually saved you at one point. Yes, exactly. Even the one that is destroying your life right now. You reach for a cigarette because once upon a time it gave you a tiny moment of relief during a stressful time. You overeat at night because food once became your warmth, your pseudo-safety. In a hard moment, you endlessly scroll your feed because it once gave you a sense of connection to the world when everything around you felt lonely. You see, the problem isn't the habit. The problem is the pain inside that you once covered up with it like an old Band-Aid. And as long as you're going to war with the habit but ignoring its root, you are doomed to spin in the exact same circle. The promise, the attempt, the relapse, the shame. A new promise, a new relapse. Years go by like this, sometimes entire lifetimes. Now, let's talk about why fighting makes it worse. In an ancient Zen school, monks were taught a very simple thing. Don't fight the fog, or you'll only wander deeper into it. When you try to snap your habit over your knee, a conflict rises up inside you. One part wants a new life, while the other desperately defends an old survival strategy. And the war begins. The harder you try to quit smoking, the stronger the pull of the cigarette. The more strictly you forbid yourself from having sugar, the more vividly you dream about it at night. The louder you shout that your new life starts on Monday, the faster you crash by Wednesday. This isn't a weakness of character, it's physiology. The brain protects stability, even if that stability is slowly destroying you. There was once a Japanese calligraphy master. For years, he tried to conquer his anger. He meditated, he fasted, he forced himself into silence. And the harder he fought, the more furious he became. Until an old mentor told him one phrase. Stop fighting the wave. Learn to simply see it. This is where the Japanese approach begins. We don't suppress. We notice and we redirect. It's a path that doesn't break the mind, but takes it by the hand and gently guides it out of the trap. Now, about willpower. Most people try to change their lives entirely through willpower, and that is exactly why they lose. The samurai used to say, that which requires effort every day is doomed. That which is built into a ritual becomes eternal. Willpower is great for a short sprint, but not for a daily battle that lasts for months and years. And this is where Kaizen comes in, the path of small steps. It doesn't work just because it sounds poetic. It works because it doesn't trigger the brain's resistance. It doesn't scare you. It doesn't demand heroic effort. And it allows your nervous system to rewire itself gradually without panic and self-sabotage. Kaizen asks a different question, not how do I break this habit, but rather, what is the smallest thing I can do so my brain won't even notice I've changed? That question changes everything. There's a story about a Tokyo businessman. He had smoked for over 20 years and tried everything. Patches, pills, strict promises, apps, hypnosis. Every time, he went right back to it. Until an old monk told him, "You are trying to conquer it again. Try making friends with it." "How can you make friends with a cigarette?" he wondered. The monk replied, "As long as you see the habit as an enemy, you are fighting a part of yourself. Don't quit, just slow down." And he gave him one rule. When you want to smoke, don't forbid it. Just hold the cigarette in your hand for 10 minutes. Don't light it, just hold it. After a week, the cravings grew shorter. After a month, they started fading on their own. After 3 months, he quit entirely, not through willpower, but through awareness. Here is the first lesson of this system. A bad habit is not a monster. It's comfort that morphed into an addiction, protection that became a prison, solace that turned into a chain. And the way out doesn't start with screaming, "I'm quitting everything." It starts with a simple question. What are you replacing for me? And how can I give that to myself differently? Picture a moment like this. It's evening. The room is almost dark. You're sitting there and you feel it rising again, that familiar urge. And you already know how this ends. Right here, Japanese philosophy offers you something incredibly valuable. A craving is not a dragon tearing you apart from the inside. A craving is a wave. Every craving has phases. First, a light impulse, just a thought of, "I want this." Then the climb to the peak, a few minutes where it feels absolutely impossible to endure. And then the crash, a complete disappearance, as long as you don't act on autopilot. And here is the most important thing you need to know. A craving doesn't last long, but your habit trains you to act exactly at the peak. That's exactly why it feels like you can't resist. But you actually can if you stop fighting. In one martial arts school, they would take a student out to the raging ocean and tell him, "Stand in front of the wave. Endure it. Do not move." The wave would knock him off his feet over and over again. The mentor would say, "You are trying to be stronger than the ocean, but you need to be more fluid. If you fight the craving, it grows. If you run from it, it catches you. If you distract yourself, it comes back. If you observe it, it vanishes." That is Zen. Look at the feeling, but do not become it. Now, about that 10-minute rule. It's one of the most powerful Japanese methods out there. It seems almost ridiculous in its simplicity. When the craving hits, don't forbid it. Allow it, but delay it. Tell yourself, "I'll do this a little later. But for the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to sit right next to this desire." Don't distract yourself. Don't chase the thought away. Just watch the craving like a cloud drifting across the sky. Here is what happens next. Minute 1, the urge is still strong. Minute 2, your body tenses up a bit. By the 3rd or 4th minute, you hit the peak. It feels like the wave is crashing over your head. But then, it starts to let go. By the 7th or 8th minute, it's noticeably easier. By the 10th, the wave has almost vanished. And here is the crucial moment. Once the peak has passed, you are no longer making a decision under pressure. You are choosing consciously. And a conscious choice is almost always a healthy one. That Tokyo businessman quit smoking after 20 years exactly like this. He never once forbade himself a cigarette. He simply stopped giving in to the wave. Now let's talk about naming the craving. A craving almost always hides in the fog. It whispers, "I just want it. I'll just relax a little. Just this once, it's no big deal." In Zen, there's a simple technique. Name the feeling calmly and without judgment. As soon as the craving rises, tell yourself, this is the desire to smoke. This is anxiety. This is boredom. This is exhaustion. In that exact moment, you separate yourself from the impulse. You are no longer saying, "I want." You are saying, "A desire has appeared within me." The samurai used to say, if you name the demon, it loses half its power. The craving stops being a monster. It becomes just a normal physical sensation that you can wait out. And there's another vital point about relapsing at the peak. Most people are convinced that the peak of a craving is just the beginning, that it's only going to get worse from there. In reality, it's the exact opposite. The peak is the wave's last desperate gasp. After that, there is only the decline. If you can hold on for just a few minutes, you are free. If you give in, the cycle reboots. And every single time, the bridge between the feeling and the automatic action gets stronger. But here is the good news. You can dismantle that bridge, gently, step by step. Picture a forest with two paths. The old, well-worn trail is your bad habit. The new one, barely visible, represents your healthy choices, your new life. The old path always feels easier. Your feet just naturally wander down it. But the Japanese teach us not to destroy the old path, but simply to stop walking on it. Every time a craving arrives and you don't take the automatic action, the grass on that old trail grows a little taller. The path starts to overgrow. A day comes when you realize the cravings are weaker and your strength is greater. This new life doesn't feel like an experiment anymore. It feels like the baseline. The samurai had a strange practice. They would mentally live through the worst possible outcome before the battle even started. Defeat, injury, shame, death. Not to scare themselves, but to free themselves from fear. They believed that a man who has already died before the battle fears nothing and is therefore invincible. The exact same concept applies to bad habits. Many people live in a constant state of fear about relapsing. Just don't mess up. I have to hold on. If I slip up, everything is ruined. That fear makes the craving exponentially stronger because whatever is forbidden internally becomes intensely attractive. The samurai approach is different. You don't fear the possibility of falling. You acknowledge it. Yes, I might relapse. Yes, it's possible. Yes, I am a living human being. And what then? It's not fatal. This is what it means to internally die before the battle. You stop feeding your potential failure with fear. Now let's look at the vicious circle of fear. Here is how it works. You feel a craving. The craving triggers fear. The fear creates stress. And the stress amplifies the craving. You relapse, and then you punish yourself. The shame increases the stress. The cycle repeats itself over and over again. The ancient masters used to say, "Don't fight a shadow. It only grows from your punches." There's a story in Japanese folklore. Every night, a young warrior faced a massive demon at the door of his home. He fought it. He ran away. He hid. The demon only grew larger. An old master told him, "You are feeding it with your own fear. Next time it comes, bow to it and say, 'Come in. I am listening.'" The warrior did exactly that. Instantly, the demon shrank. A week later, it was the size of a child, and a month later, it vanished. Acceptance does not mean surrendering to your addiction. Acceptance means you stop handing over your power through terror and self-hatred. Now let's talk about what this looks like in practice. When a craving rises, instead of panicking, try this. Stop and feel your body. Where does this desire live? In your chest, your stomach, your throat? Name it. This is a desire. This is a wave. Let it be there. Don't fight it. Don't run from it. Tell yourself, I can handle this. Let it pass on its own. Activate that 10-minute rule, and you'll experience what the samurai knew for centuries. If you don't rush into battle, the enemy surrenders first. Now, let's talk about substitution. Imagine a house where an old wall was torn down, but a new one was never built. You're left with a hole, chaos, and danger. It's the exact same thing with habits. If you remove an old behavior and don't provide a new one, the brain creates a void, and that void is painful. It returns to what is familiar, even if it's destructive. That's why the Japanese don't just break habits, they replace them. Here is the key question that changes everything. Not how do I quit, but rather, what exactly am I trying to numb with this? Stress, boredom, loneliness, anxiety, fatigue. Every bad habit is a coping mechanism for something. A terrible mechanism, sure, but a mechanism nonetheless. And once you find the answer, the next question appears. What can I replace this action with to get the exact same feeling, but without the destruction? Instead of sugar, a warm cup of tea and a deep breath. Instead of endless scrolling, a short walk. Instead of a cigarette, a few mindful breaths. Instead of your phone before bed, a piece of paper and simply writing down your thoughts. There is one crucial condition here. The new ritual has to be easy. Otherwise, your brain will reject it. As this substitution is repeated over and over, the old habit naturally begins to die off. You are no longer giving it a charge. You aren't feeding the impulse, and you are meeting your actual need in a completely different way. The neural pathways rewire themselves. This isn't a struggle anymore. It's maturity. There are two versions of you living inside you, the automatic self and the conscious self. Destructive habits almost always belong to the automatic self. It doesn't ask, it doesn't doubt, it doesn't choose. It just repeats what it has done thousands of times before. Your hand reaches for your phone, not because you actually need it, but because it's used to doing it. You grab something sweet, not out of hunger, but out of a patterned response. You open a social app, not from genuine desire, but entirely out of momentum. The samurai understood this perfectly. The real enemy isn't the feeling, and it isn't the craving. The real enemy is living life on autopilot. In Japanese culture, there is a concept called ichigo ichie. It translates to one encounter, one moment. The meaning is profound but simple. This current moment is unique and unrepeatable. There will never be another one exactly like it. A samurai could repeat a single motion 1,000 times, but he treated every single one as if it were the very first. That is how you kill the autopilot, and that is how awareness is born. If you bring this into everyday life, say your hand reaches for your phone. Stop for just a second. Tell yourself, this is a new moment. I get to choose here rather than just blindly repeat. Just one micro decision like that shatters the chain. Now let's look at the 3-second pause. It's one of the absolute simplest yet most powerful techniques. Catch yourself in an automatic action. Just pause. Count to 3 in your head. Not to forbid yourself from doing the thing, but to take back the steering wheel. Those 3 seconds switch your conscious brain back online, right where just a fraction of a second ago there was nothing but pure reaction. Suddenly, a choice appears. The samurai did exactly this. Before a strike, a pause. Before a step, a pause. Before a decision, a pause. In that tiny gap of time, their power was born. Now the most critical part: what to do after a relapse. You are going to slip up at least once, and honestly, probably multiple times. And that is completely normal. The issue isn't that a person falls down. The issue is that they consider the fall to be the end of the road. Zen masters used to say a relapse is just part of the path. It's not a failure. It's a lesson. You actually need that slip-up to find the weak link, to figure out exactly which emotion triggers the habit, to learn how to spot the impulse in time, and to build genuine resilience. Without falling, there is no real discipline. Here is how people usually react to a relapse. They slip up. They judge themselves. They feel buried in shame. They lose all motivation, and they fall right back into the old pattern. That is the Western style of inner warfare. The Japanese path is different. First, a simple acknowledgement without the drama. Yes, I did this. It's just a fact. No self-flagellation, no beating yourself up. Second, ask the right question. Not, why am I so weak? But rather, what exactly was I feeling right before I slipped? The answer almost always points to a very specific trigger. Exhaustion, boredom, stress, loneliness, anxiety, disappointment. Once you understand the trigger, you can actually change the pattern. And third, and most importantly, your recovery doesn't start on Monday. It starts right now. A relapse isn't a period at the end of a sentence. It's a comma. The journey keeps going. Now let's talk about destroying the context. Very often a habit is tied not just to an emotion, but to a specific place, a specific time, a specific object. You smoke on the porch. You scroll your feed in bed. You eat junk food in the kitchen late at night. You zone out on your phone at your desk. Instead of going to war with the habit itself, demolish its stage. Do you smoke on the porch? Go somewhere else. Break the association between the porch and the cigarette. Charge your phone in another room instead of right next to your bed. Put the sweets completely out of sight. Change your usual environment. You change the context, you change the behavior. The Japanese call this the destruction of conditions, and it works faster than any vows or promises you could ever make. And the last thing in this chapter is the principle of mushin. Mushin is action that does not rely on mood. Relapses don't happen because you have a bad character. They happen when we tie necessary actions to having a good mood. I'm not in the mood. I don't have the energy. I'll definitely do it tomorrow. The samurai knew that an emotion is a wave, but an action is the path. When you do what needs to be done, regardless of whether you feel inspired or not, your life changes incredibly fast. One master used to say, "True discipline is when the hand raises the sword, even if the heart doesn't want to." Every single time you're about to do something beneficial, quietly tell yourself, "My feelings might lag behind, but I am moving forward." That tiny internal decision shifts the entire trajectory of your life, from impulse to choice, from autopilot to conscious power. The ancient Japanese masters noticed one profound thing. Strong people don't conquer their habits, they outgrow them. And that is exactly what Kaizen is. The path of small, almost invisible steps that, when added up, transform a person far more deeply than any heroic leap ever could. The most dangerous enemies aren't on the outside. The greatest danger lies in those quiet voices inside your head. Do it tomorrow. Wait until everything is perfect. You aren't enough. You're never going to change anyway. The system of small steps was created to silence those exact voices. There is a Japanese word, nomi. It's a tiny chisel the Japanese woodworkers use to carve the most intricate details. One strike, a second a third. Day after day, year after year. That is how they built temples that have stood for centuries. The samurai brought this exact principle into daily life. A tiny action repeated over and over is stronger than 1,000 loud promises. When you shift your behavior by just 1%, your brain's resistance doesn't kick in. Panic doesn't rise. You aren't breaking yourself. You are creating space for growth. And within that new space, your bad habits gradually just become unnecessary. Now, let's talk about the morning reset. Every single dawn, a Japanese warrior would perform very simple actions. Cold water to clear the face and the mind. Tidying up his immediate surroundings, even if things were already clean. Just one tiny action along his chosen path. Why does this matter? Because the morning is the ultimate point of choice. One small correct action sets the rhythm of discipline for the entire day. Once you start the day right, it becomes so much harder to tear it down with a bad habit by the time evening rolls around. Now, back to relapses. The Japanese formula. The Japanese had absolutely no interest in avoiding mistakes. They were interested in using mistakes to their advantage. The formula is incredibly simple. Acknowledge the fall without the drama. Find the cause, not someone or something to blame, and make one tiny correction. Not tomorrow I will be the perfect version of myself, but rather, what can I shift by just 1% right now? Massive reform breaks the psyche. A tiny adjustment builds a brand new road. And that is exactly how true mastery is assembled. Finally, a word on real progress. A lot of people think progress means the craving has vanished forever. The Japanese say something else entirely. Progress begins the moment you stop being afraid of the craving. It doesn't matter what you feel. It only matters what you do. Progress is when you take a pause instead of taking an automatic action. When you notice an emotion, but you refuse to drown in it. When you choose a tiny step forward instead of your comfortable, familiar pattern. When you don't abandon the path after a relapse, but just keep walking, even if it's slowly. Slow growth creates monumental change. There is a story. They say there once lived a young samurai named Kanoya. He was the weakest of them all. He lost almost every sparring match, and he made mistakes more often than anyone else. The other students would laugh at him and say, "You were born to lose." But Kanoya had one unique quality. He always showed up tomorrow. Every single day, without any grand speeches or loud promises. He wasn't particularly talented. He wasn't fast. He wasn't the bravest. But every single day, he took one small step. A few strikes with his sword. Sometimes he just stepped onto the training grounds when the others were too lazy to leave their houses. Then one day, the masters noticed something. His strikes had become smoother. His stance was grounded. His breathing was deep. He didn't become great overnight. He just quietly outgrew everyone else. When they finally asked him how he became so powerful, he answered, "I don't really feel powerful. I just stopped stopping." They recorded those words on a scroll. The one who refuses to give up wins even without an ounce of talent. So here is the samurai formula for breaking out of any bad habit. Notice the craving, but do not act immediately. The wave will recede on its own. Give yourself a 10-minute pause. That is how you break the autopilot. Call the emotion by its actual name. That is how you separate yourself from the impulse. Replace the ritual. Do not leave a void behind. That is how you build a new path. Take tiny steps every single day. Growing by 1% a day alters your destiny. Analyze your relapses without a shred of shame. That is how mistakes transform into power. Take action regardless of your mood. That is how a true warrior lives. And at some point, a morning will come. You'll wake up and realize you are no longer fighting an endless war against yourself. You've simply become a different person. Not because you won one heroic cinematic victory, but because every single day you took one small, honest step. If this video hit home for you, drop a like. It really helps other people who need to hear this find the video. Hit subscribe. This is where you'll find content that helps you figure yourself out without all the extra noise and empty promises. I'll see you next time.